The Grand Hall of the Stellar Diplomatic Corps' headquarters hummed with tension as Commander Derek Steele adjusted his dress uniform for what seemed like the 100th time. The sleek, dark fabric clung to his well-toned frame, striking the perfect balance between military precision and diplomatic elegance. His neatly groomed beard and mustache framed a face that had charmed many throughout his career, but today was unlike any other. Today, he was about to marry someone whose face he had never truly seen. "You can still back out." Admiral Richardson's voice was low and filled with concern as he stood beside Derek. His weathered features were etched with worry. "No one would blame you. Hell, half the galaxy thinks she's hiding some kind of hideous deformity beneath that veil." Derek ran a hand through his dark hair, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Let them think what they want. Not a chance in hell, sir." The vast hall was split into two sections. On one side, the human delegation stood in their crisp military uniforms, radiating precision and discipline. On the other, the Aetherian representatives waited in flowing, iridescent robes that seemed to shimmer with every flicker of light. At the center of the room stood his bride-to-be, Princess Lia of the Aetherian Empire. Her ceremonial gray veil was an advanced, high-tech version of a niqab, obscuring every feature of her face. The fabric moved fluidly, like liquid mercury, making it impossible to distinguish any shape beneath it. "The things we do for peace," Derek muttered, straightening his posture. The hybrid Earth-Aetherian ceremony unfolded with the grandeur one would expect for such a historic moment. Derek spoke his vows clearly and confidently, his deep voice reverberating through the still chamber. When it came time to exchange rings, he noticed his bride's hands trembled ever so slightly, the first sign of vulnerability he had seen from her. Then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived, the unveiling of the bride. Derek held his breath, as did the rest of the room, when Princess Lia slowly raised her hands to lift the veil. It parted like a curtain of starlight, revealing a face that made Derek's heart skip. Her skin was a pale, luminescent light purple, glowing faintly from within. Her large violet eyes sparkled with intelligence and perhaps a touch of amusement. Her long white hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of moonlight. She was breathtaking. A collective gasp filled the chamber. Derek realized he had been holding his breath and quickly exhaled. Princess Lia's voice, melodious and teasing, broke the silence. "Were you expecting tentacles, Commander?" Derek chuckled, the tension in his shoulders evaporating. "Actually, I was betting on scales. I owe Admiral Richardson 20 credits." Her laughter, like chimes, echoed in the room. "How disappointing for you both. I trust you'll survive the disappointment of marrying a merely beautiful alien princess." "I suppose I'll manage somehow," he replied with a roguish grin, earning more laughter from both delegations. The rest of the ceremony went smoothly, though Derek couldn't shake the sense that something was amiss. He noticed Counselor Taich, the Aetherian diplomatic chief, gripping his ceremonial staff with white-knuckled intensity. The man's rigid posture set off alarm bells in Derek's tactical mind. Later, during the reception, Derek and Lia found a quiet corner away from the hubbub of diplomatic chatter. "You know," Lia said softly, sipping a shimmering blue drink, "you're the first person outside my family who didn't flinch when I removed the veil." Derek raised an eyebrow. Why would anyone flinch at such a lovely face? Lia tilted her head, studying him with a curious look. "Most species find our bioluminescence unsettling. That's why we developed the veils in the first place." She paused, her violet eyes locking onto his. "But you humans, you're different, aren't you? Always charging headfirst into the unknown." "It's kind of our thing," Derek admitted. "But I prefer to think of it as embracing new possibilities." A shadow passed over Lia's face, and she lowered her voice. "Speaking of possibilities, there are things you need to know, husband. Forces at work." She stopped abruptly as the sharp sound of breaking glass cut through the conversation. They both turned to see Counselor Taich sprawled on the floor, his ceremonial staff skittering across the polished surface as guards rushed to help him up. Derek caught a glimpse of something metallic beneath the man's robes, definitely not standard diplomatic attire. "Well," Derek muttered, "this should be interesting." That night, in the newlyweds' private quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Star Sovereign. Derek took in the room's careful blend of human and Aetherian design. The starlight filtered through a crystalline viewport, casting ethereal patterns across Lia's purple skin as she gazed out at the cosmic spectacle. "Your heart rate increases whenever you look at me," she observed without turning, a playful note in her voice. Is that a human response to aesthetic appreciation or something more primal? Derek took a slow step toward her, admiring how her white hair seemed to shimmer in the starlight. "Both. Actually, you're fascinating in ways I'm still trying to comprehend." She turned to face him, her violet eyes sparkling with curiosity, and perhaps something more. Humans are remarkably direct with their emotions. It's refreshing. Among my people, such openness would be considered uncouth. He grinned, closing the distance between them. "Isn't that a bit direct?" he teased. Lia's lips curved into a mischievous smile. "I'm a princess. We're allowed certain liberties." She reached up, her fingers gently tracing the line of his beard, sending a thrill through him. "Your facial hair, for instance. Among Aetherians, such features are impossible. I find it intriguingly masculine." Derek caught her hand and brought it to his lips. "And I find everything about you intriguing. The way your skin glows when you're excited, how your eyes shift colors with your emotions." Lia's bioluminescence brightened at his words, proving his point. "Most species avoid looking at us directly. They find our light unsettling." Derek's voice softened. "Humans are drawn to light." She studied him intently as he placed a hand at her waist. "We've been reaching for the stars since we first looked up at the night sky." Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory. Derek marveled at how her lips tingled against his, like an electric current. When they parted, Lia's skin glowed brighter, and she breathed out softly. "Our research indicated that human mating rituals are more complex, requiring extensive courtship periods," she said, her voice tinged with surprise. Derek grinned. "Well, sometimes we just leap into the unknown." The room seemed to hold its breath after their kiss, the electric charge still hanging in the air as they pulled away. Lia's skin had taken on a brighter glow, her violet eyes gleaming with something more than curiosity now, something deeper, perhaps even more intimate. Derek, still caught in the moment, couldn't help but smile at her, his pulse still racing. "You humans do like to dive in head first, don't you?" Lia mused, her voice soft, melodic, and teasing. She tilted her head, watching him with a knowing expression. "I expected some hesitation, but you seem unfazed. Why hesitate when there's so much to discover?" Derek replied, his eyes lingering on her, admiring not just her alien beauty, but the fascinating layers of her personality that were beginning to unravel before him. Lia's smile deepened as she stepped back slightly, turning to gaze out of the viewport again, her gaze fixed on the endless stars beyond. Derek followed her movements, his mind still processing the whirlwind of the day. Marriage, alien diplomacy, and the strange forces that seemed to lurk just beneath the surface. "You know," Lia began, her voice quieter now, "not many would have the courage to do what you've done today. Bonding without seeing. Well, all of me." She glanced at him over her shoulder. Most species would recoil at the thought. Derek, his arms crossed, leaned against the wall, watching her. "And yet, here we are." His voice held a note of quiet confidence. "It's not the surface that matters. I'm more interested in what's beneath the veil, what's inside." Lia's smile softened as she turned to face him fully, her violet eyes meeting his. "Then you'll be pleased to know that there's a lot more beneath this veil than just my appearance." Her voice dropped a little lower, almost as if she were sharing a secret. "But there are things about my people, our empire, things you should know." Derek's curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What's going on, Lia?" She walked towards the center of the room, her movements graceful and fluid. "There are forces at play, political and personal, that threaten more than just the peace we've worked so hard to establish. I'm not just a symbol of this alliance, Derek," she continued, her voice now serious. "I'm the target of those who would prefer war to peace. There are factions within my empire who do not agree with this union. Some believe that my marriage to you is a betrayal, a weakening of our power. Derek felt a chill creep up his spine, the weight of her words sinking in. And these factions, they want to stop the Union? Lia nodded, her expression hardening. Yes, some of them are already taking action. The counselor you saw earlier. He's one of them. The moment you noticed something off about him, you were right. He was carrying weapons beneath his robes, hidden for a reason. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Derek asked, his voice tight, the protective instincts that had been honed over years of military service kicking in. I had hoped we could keep the peace a little longer, Lia replied softly. But now it's clear. We have to be ready for what's coming. Derek stood up straighter, the realization that their peaceful marriage might have unintended consequences beginning to take shape in his mind. He stepped closer to her, determination in his eyes. We'll face it together, he said, his tone firm. We'll make sure they don't tear apart what we've just started. No one's going to tear down this alliance. Not while I'm here. Lia's eyes softened, a mixture of gratitude and affection crossing her features. You humans are so resolute, she said almost fondly. It's one of the things I find most fascinating about you. Derek smiled. It's what makes us stubbornly optimistic. He reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against her arm. And now, more than ever, I'm ready for whatever comes next. If these factions want to fight, they'll get one. But I won't let them take you from me. Not now. Lia's gaze held his for a long moment, the weight of her emotions clearly in her eyes. But there was something else there too, something that Derek recognized, a strength, a quiet, unyielding strength that matched his own. I'm glad you're with me in this, Lia said softly, her voice almost a whisper. But be careful, Derek. The dangers ahead are not just from outside forces. Derek furrowed his brow, but before he could ask what she meant, a sudden blaring alarm interrupted the moment. The ship's lights flickered briefly, then stabilized, and a voice crackled over the intercom. Emergency alert. Unknown craft detected approaching at high speed. All personnel, brace for possible impact. Commander Steele, report to the command deck immediately. Derek's heart raced. This is it, he said, already moving toward the door. Stay close, Lia. We're in this together. She nodded, her expression steely, the princess now fully in control. Lead the way, Commander. The two of them left the quarters together, stepping into the corridor. The atmosphere had shifted. What had been a moment of quiet intimacy was now overshadowed by the looming threat of whatever was coming next. As they made their way toward the command deck, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The unknown had just arrived at their doorstep. The command deck was a flurry of activity as Derek and Lia arrived, the tension palpable in the air. Officers rushed to their stations, their faces lit by the eerie glow of hollow screens and flashing warning lights. The Star Sovereign was on high alert, and every inch of the vast ship seemed to hum with anticipation. Derek's boots clicked sharply on the metallic floor as he made his way to the command console, his eyes scanning the data streams with practiced precision. Lia followed closely behind, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around them. Her luminous skin seemed to glow even brighter under the harsh lighting of the deck, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays that filled the room. Status report, Derek commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. A young officer turned to face him, their face pale. Sir, we've detected an unidentified craft on an intercept course. It's not transmitting any IFF signals. No identification, no communication. It's as if they're trying to remain hidden. How long until they make contact? Derek's voice was sharp, his mind already racing through possible scenarios. His instincts told him this was no simple navigation error. The officer hesitated, tapping a few commands into their terminal. The ship is moving at an incredibly high velocity. At current speed, it will reach us in approximately 3 minutes, Commander. Derek glanced at Lia, who had been silent since entering the deck, her violet eyes locked on the main screen, where the shape of the unknown vessel was slowly beginning to take form. A sleek, dark silhouette, just enough to send a ripple of unease through the room. Lia stepped forward, her voice cool and commanding. Activate shields now. I don't believe this is a simple misunderstanding. Whoever this is, they've come for us. Derek nodded to the officer in charge of the ship's defense systems. Shields up and prepare for evasive maneuvers. I want full tactical readiness. If this turns hostile, we don't hold back. The hum of the ship's shield generators filled the air as a shimmering barrier materialized around the Star Sovereign, a web of light that would protect them from whatever threat was approaching. The crew worked quickly, tension building with every passing second. "Commander," another officer spoke up, his voice strained. "The enemy ship, it's changing course. They're now aligning with our communications relay. They seem to be trying to block our transmissions. Cut the connection to outside systems." Derek ordered immediately, his mind working overtime. "No messages leave this ship until we know who we're dealing with." Lia stepped to his side, her violet eyes scanning the tactical readouts. "This feels like an ambush," she murmured, her voice low. "Whoever this is, they knew we'd be here. They've likely been watching us for some time." Derek looked at her sharply. How would they know? The details of this wedding were confidential. Only a few people even knew the time and place. Not everyone would respect those boundaries, Lia replied, her voice tinged with something Derek couldn't quite place. "My people have enemies, some among the highest ranks in my empire. It's possible that this is more than a random attack. Someone wants us dead." Derek clenched his fists at his sides, the weight of her words sinking in. Enemies of the Empire. He had always known that Lia's position as a political figure would come with risks, but he hadn't expected it to escalate so quickly. "We'll deal with whoever is behind this," Derek said firmly, his gaze meeting Lia's. "But we need answers. And fast." The unknown ship was now close enough to the Star Sovereign that it filled the main viewing screen. It was sleek, angular, and black as night, far more advanced than anything Derek had seen before. The design was unlike any military ship in the Alliance, almost too perfect in its composition. A sharp sense of dread settled in his gut. "Raise shields to full power," he ordered. "We need to be ready for anything." Lia watched the enemy vessel with a mixture of wariness and something else, recognition perhaps. Derek didn't have time to ask what was going through her mind. Just as he turned to issue another command, the alarms blared once again, louder and more urgent this time. "Incoming fire," the weapons officer shouted. Before anyone could react, a blinding flash of blue light erupted from the enemy ship, slamming into the Star Sovereign's shields. The deck shuddered under the impact, the lights flickering as the ship groaned in response. "Status?" Derek barked, grabbing the nearest console. "We've taken a hit," came the immediate reply. "Shields are holding, but that shot drained 30% of our energy reserves." "Return fire," Derek snapped. "Target their weapon systems and engines. Disable them. But don't destroy them unless we have no choice." As the crew sprang into action, Lia stepped closer to Derek, her eyes narrowed in concentration. She placed a hand lightly on his arm, her voice low but urgent. "Derek, you need to know something." He turned to her, sensing the gravity in her tone. "What is it?" "That ship," Lia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just a random attack. I recognize the markings on its hull. It's a rogue faction of the Aetherian military, a splinter group that has been growing in power for some time. They've been watching me, and now they've decided it's time to act." Derek's mind raced, the implications of her words sinking in. "So they were planning this all along? They knew we were vulnerable?" Lia nodded, her expression tight. "And they won't stop until they've taken me down. We're not just fighting for peace anymore, Derek. This is a battle for my life, and for the future of both our peoples." As the battle raged on outside, Derek's resolve hardened. This was no longer just about a diplomatic union. It was about survival, and he would do whatever it took to protect his wife, his people, and the fragile alliance they had built. The unknown had arrived, and it was far more dangerous than either of them had imagined. The Star Sovereign shook again as another blast struck its shields, sending ripples across the smooth surface of the command console. The hum of the engines seemed louder now, like the heartbeat of the ship itself, steady but under strain. Derek gripped the edge of the tactical console, his eyes never leaving the display in front of him. "Target their weapons array," Derek ordered, his voice cold, precise. "We can't let them keep firing at us like this." Lia stood to his side, her presence a steadying force in the chaos of the command deck. She watched the screens with an intensity that mirrored Derek's own, her violet eyes focused as if she could see through the data and into the heart of the enemy ship itself. "They're not responding to our hails," one of the officers reported, their voice laced with frustration. "They're jamming our communications completely." Derek nodded grimly. "We don't need their response. We need them to stop firing." He glanced at Lia, her face lit by the glow of the screen, her silver-purple skin almost glowing with an ethereal light in the dim control room. The calm demeanor she maintained in the midst of all this chaos only deepened his respect for her. But her eyes, the dark violet depths, were full of something else now, something dark and unreadable. "What are they after, Lia?" Derek asked, his voice softer than before. Lia didn't look at him, her attention fixed on the enemy ship. "Power," she said simply. "Revenge, maybe. There are some factions in my empire that believe my marriage to you is a betrayal, a symbol of weakness. They would do anything to destroy this alliance. If they succeed, they fracture both of our worlds. And if I fall, it sends a message." Derek's jaw tightened. "Then we can't let that happen." She nodded, her gaze still unwavering. "I've seen their tactics before, Derek. They'll strike fast, hit us where we're weakest, and then disappear before we even realize what's happened." "We'll hit first then," Derek replied, his voice steely. "Good," Lia said, a rare flicker of approval in her eyes. "Do what you do best, Commander." A voice broke through the tension. "We've locked onto their weapon systems, Commander. Preparing to fire." "Do it," Derek commanded. The ship shuddered again as the Star Sovereign's weapon systems fired back, bright beams of energy lancing out toward the enemy ship. The tension in the room was unbearable. Every crew member silently praying that their fire would connect, that it would disable their attackers long enough to buy them the time they needed. The enemy ship's shields flared as the first barrage struck, but it didn't falter. Instead, the enemy ship accelerated, closing the distance between them with alarming speed. "What the hell are they doing?" Derek muttered under his breath, his mind racing. They weren't just retreating or defending. They were preparing for something far worse. "Admiral Richardson to command deck," came a voice over the intercom. "Derek, we need you in the ship's lower levels now. There's something you need to see." Derek didn't hesitate. "Lia, stay here. Keep monitoring the situation." Lia's eyes met his for a moment, something unreadable flickering in their depths. She didn't protest. She knew the situation was beyond even her vast knowledge of political intricacies. "Be careful, Commander," she said softly. Derek gave her a nod and then sprinted toward the exit, his boots thudding loudly on the deck. The ship felt alive with the tension of impending danger as he made his way to the lower levels. His mind raced. What had Admiral Richardson seen that was so urgent? Was there something about the enemy ship they hadn't yet realized? When he arrived at the lower levels, he found Admiral Richardson standing by the cargo hold, his face grim. A group of engineers and tactical officers were gathered around a large, open panel on the wall. "What's going on?" Derek demanded. Richardson turned, his weathered face tight with concern. "It's the ship's hull, Commander. We've discovered a hidden breach, a containment breach in the lower cargo bay. Whoever they are, they've planted something on us." Derek's heart dropped. "A bomb?" "Not exactly," the Admiral said, his voice laced with disbelief. "This isn't just any explosive. It's an energy destabilizer, a device designed to overload our reactors. If it detonates, it'll cripple the ship from the inside out. We'll be dead in seconds." Derek's mind went into overdrive. A silent, invisible weapon planted right under their noses. This wasn't just an attack on their ship. It was an assassination attempt on both him and Lia. "How much time do we have?" Derek asked, stepping closer to the panel. "Less than 15 minutes, if we're lucky. The device is already set to destabilize the core. If we don't disarm it in time..." Admiral Richardson let the rest of the sentence hang in the air, unspoken. Derek cursed under his breath. "How do we stop it?" The chief engineer, a wiry officer named Tessa, stepped forward. "We need to bypass the device's control system. It's linked to the ship's main reactor, but we might be able to reroute the power long enough to shut it down." We'll need to work fast. Get to it, Derek commanded. I'll stay here and monitor the situation. We can't afford any surprises. As the engineers and tactical officers scrambled to work on the device, Derek's mind raced with thoughts of Lia. He knew she was in the command deck, probably still tracking the enemy ship, but with this new threat looming, he couldn't afford to waste time thinking about anything else. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and a loud crash echoed from above. The ship jerked violently, throwing Derek off balance. "Status report," he shouted. "We've been boarded," came the immediate reply. The enemy ship launched boarding pods. Troops are inside the ship. They're making their way toward the reactor core. Derek's blood ran cold. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a full-scale assault on the heart of the Star Sovereign. The enemy wasn't just trying to destroy the ship. They were coming for them personally. "Get the device disarmed now," Derek ordered, his voice low but urgent. "And make sure they don't reach the core." The stakes had just been raised higher than ever before.